Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I am continuing my series of webinars, and you can find all of them on the wendymurdoch.com/webinars website now. We're going to continue to have great guests. It's all going to still be free. You can go there and see the upcoming guests. And as a member of the webinars, you're also going to be privileged to some special events that I'm going to be hosting. So more on that later. Tonight, my guest is Cari Swanson, and Cari contacted me because she had a special need. And when I found out what she needed, I was so excited and couldn't wait to talk to her. So we made her a very special pair of Surefoot pads because they needed to be black. And I'll let her explain why that is. But welcome, Cari. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so great to be here. Yeah, I grew up on a horse farm, and I've had horses my whole life. And so they've just taken me around the world into many different industries. And as you said, I needed black Surefoot pads because I use them to train horses to go to a mark. And I do that because when I work in film and television and on production sets for music videos, and a lot of times, of course, the set, they don't want to see the pads. They don't want to see the green or yellow or whatever pads. So I requested the black ones so they'd blend into the background. And the reason being that Luna, my black Hanoverian mare, is just like a supermodel. The camera comes out and she's just posing and she's gorgeous. She's really stunning. And her favorite place is to be on set in front of a camera. Wow. And just 2 weeks ago, actually, I was on set with Bad Bunny, who is a musician. He's probably the largest selling musician in the world. I had never heard of him because I don't listen to Latin music. But he's from Puerto Rico. He's a young guy, and he's phenomenal, and he loves horses. So he cast Luna on a set, and it's called a Psych, which means you come into the room, and the entire room is white. The floor is white. In this case, white pads may have worked, but it's okay because we didn't show the feet. But so the ceiling's white. It's like you're out to sea. There's no frame of reference for the horse or for the person, and it's very disconcerting. So I train horses to go to the mark, and that way, when I get on set, I put them immediately on the Surefoot pads, and it totally calms their nervous system, as you know, but also it gives them that confidence that they know where they are. It grounds them in many ways, more than probably what you developed them for.
No, that's exactly what I've done. But before we go there, I want to go back a little bit because when I looked at your website, you have done so many different things in the horse world. So obviously you must have ridden as a child.
Yes, I went through 4-H, Pony Club. I evented, I did show jumping as a junior. I can't believe it, but my mother let me drive the truck and trailer when I was 16, take my sister and I to Chagrin Valley hunt, shows down to Cincinnati, to the mini prees, and my sister and I just competed everywhere. And we would just meet trainers there who would help us out. We'd have catch trainers and didn't really have formal training at home. But we grew up on a horse farm and, just learned to ride like kids do. And then I was introduced to dressage by a great horse, Alley-Oop, who was trained to Prix St. George. And that was like a whole eye-opening experience. And I really dove deeply into that world and trained a few horses to Grand Prix. And I've always been fascinated with horses. Each of them are individuals. They each teach me so much. I loved eventing. I love the show jumping. I love dressage. I love the training aspect. And I don't love the showing. I just love making horses. And through a friend in New York City, where I live close to New York City, he also had a love of horses. He was a great photographer, and he worked a lot on film sets. And he was actually Secretariat's official photographer. He photographed Secretariat, the stamp that's Secretariat. Wow. That's his image. And he introduced me to Penny Tweedy. I mean, he's just an amazing person. But so he would call and say, listen, I'm working with Ang Lee. They need a horse. Can you bring one? Do you have something? And then that's sort of what got me into film. And I would come, and my horses were so well trained because I always train them on an obstacle course. And I've cross-trained every horse, whether if it's an FEI dressage horse, I ride him cross-country, I gallop them. I kind of learned that through eventing, the cross-training and the benefits of that. And I have always brought my horses in the house for some reason. I would bring them into my grandparents' house. I would teach them to stand up on stumps. I've always had this curiosity of how much can you train a horse to do. I loved Mr. Ed, so I would get them to talk. I mean, it's crazy stuff. And, it's just fascinating. The world of the horse is so fascinating. It's so grounding. Now we know it's very healing. So anyway, the horses it's just my passion, and I've been fortunate enough to kind of make a living at it. It's a lifestyle.
It is
As
a lifestyle.
you really don't make money with horses. And I've had some very special horses. Luna is a particularly special girl who I said, one of the things they wanted on set for her was they wanted the camera like in her eye, like how close to her eye can we get? And they were using Super 8 and Super 16. And I said, oh, you can get right up there. And she kind of leaned into the camera because I work in a round pen and I have so many friends in the film industry that they come and bring their steady cams and we work with them and photograph them. And I've had her since she was a foal. So she's been in front of the camera since the very beginning. And we would dress her up and put glitter on her and, ribbons. And she just loves it, but each horse definitely has their own unique personality. It's fun. I had Beyonce rode, I have a paint filly, and she wanted that color. They always choose for color. They don't care about the breed or anything. And she's not a rider really, and she's kind of fearful of horses. But I had Lily standing on your surefoot pads on the set, and she stood on her and she was belting out some song. It's in one of her music video movie things.
You're gonna make us all want to go back and look at all these videos now to see.
I know. Well, I was actually on set the other night, and someone said, well, do you have a reel of all of your work? And I said, no, but I need to take the time and make one because there's so many crazy stories. Like one time, one thing I often have to do is put a horse in a freight elevator to get them to the set. And that's something that you don't really think about training your horse to do. So all of my horses will walk right on an elevator and go up and down. They're fine. And
is that something you have to because they're used to a trailer? Is it okay, or is there something special you have to do to train them to an elevator?
No, a lot of it, of course, is trust.
Yeah.
I develop a tremendous trust with each individual horse. So if I put them in a unique situation, then they look to me and say, "Oh, is this okay?" And then they're like, "Okay, I can do it." So really, it's building that confidence and trust. And I train everyone, all the horses, through kindness and intuition, repetition. I put them in very unique situations. So, I suppose being on a trailer helps, but, I've been in situations where I've been called at the last minute because someone's friend had a horse. They brought him to set, but the horse freaked out. It had never been in an elevator. It wouldn't stand on the stage. So Luna, for that one set, I sent you the photos, right? The videos.
Yes.
That was working with a guy called, I think, Rob Gronkowski, a football player.
Yeah, a very famous football player, in fact. If anybody knows the New England
very
Patriots.
Nice guy. Yeah. No longer playing, but not my sport, so I had no idea who he was either. And he towered over Luna, and she's quite big. And we literally got off the trailer and we had to walk onto the stage, which you can see in that video. And so, as you know, horses need to move around, and you don't throw them on the trailer at 5 a.m, drive for 3 hours in terrible traffic, and throw them on a stage where they can't move. It's a really dangerous situation, but that's what I had to deal with. But because I had the pads, the surefoot pads, she went through her whole decompression and, checking out and processing, and it calmed her down because there was no safe place to circle her or walk her. It's crazy. In fact, one of the scenes required her they built a ramp down a set of stairs, and she had to walk down the ramp to another tiny staging area, and they took all of the seats out of the theater, and they put in big tables with jockeys sitting at them, and she was sitting at the table, standing at the table with the jockeys. But, I do a lot of preparation, and I always ask for a prep day to go look at the set, and so I can do my best to have it safe for the horses. But, a lot of times I ask for things and they don't do them. So then I have to work around them. My job is a lot of horse training is really problem solving. It's reading the situation and solving the problem and being very open to trying something new and different. Not every horse responds the same way to a situation. I mean, most of them do, respond to the pressure and release and the basic foundations of horse training, but you have to have an open mind. And some horses, love to bow and love to, rear and do different tricks. And some you can never teach them. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. So I do also go with the flow with the horse, and I let the horse tell me what their career wants to be and where they are happiest.
I have so many questions. So obviously from your childhood and doing a lot of different disciplines and stuff, you whether you were shown or you came upon the idea of using, if you will, kindness for training as opposed to pressure. And I think so many trainers, when they can't get the horse to do something, go to pressure, but it backfires, right? And so you've described trust, and I would like you to speak a little bit more about trust, because one of the, and I'll tell you why, because I so often hear about these ideas of desensitizing horses, and I really feel that that's not what we really want to do. In other words, when we desensitize to one thing, that's only that thing. But if we build trust, they'll trust us when we ask them to do a whole variety of things.
Correct. Yeah.
So can you talk about like, have you always come from that perspective, or was there an instance or something where you started?
I grew up with my grandmother, was a great horsewoman, and she trained horses that way. And I think she was born in 1910 or something. She grew up with horses driving the carriages and fox hunting. And, she had horses into her 70s, and she rode all the time. I would ride out with her every Sunday, and she took care of her 4 horses, until she couldn't. And she really taught me that. She had some difficult horses, but she taught me how to gain their trust through working with them and learning to read their energy. She was very much into energy. And, I think it was Proust who said, the only true voyage is to possess others' eyes, is to be able to see through their eyes. And I always am trying to see from the horse's perspective, what are they seeing in this situation? And you learn so much. You learn so much about life working with horses. You learn to be patient. You learn to be observant. You learn to listen. Listening is so vital. People say, oh, you're a horse whisperer. I'm like, no, I'm not really. I'm a horse listener. I listen to my horse. And I mean, you can tell if you spend enough time, with each individual horse, you can tell if they're not feeling well or they're a little bit off, if you're intuitive and you're aware of your animal. And I love mucking my own barn because then I can see how their stomach's doing. And, I love to do everything with my horses. But I have to say, one of the most difficult things for me in my work in production is the transportation, driving in and out of the city, truck and trailer, in and out of traffic, bad weather. And then after like a 10, 12-hour day shoot, driving them home, I'm so exhausted. I'm like, oh my God. And I've worked on many like HBO productions and other shows in the city in the winter, which is really hard work. That's the hardest part of my job, I have to say. And the horses travel really well. They're really good. Yeah. But
I've driven through New York with a trailer, and I've driven around DC because I live near DC, and there's so much lack of understanding of what you are doing with a truck and trailer and what you have inside of it.
That's right. And you can't stop suddenly, and you can't have people swerving around you.
Yeah. So I can understand where that would be a really exhausting part of your day. So, so you've always worked with trust. What are your tools? In other words, you're using Shearfoot pads, right? What other tools do you use to help build that trust?
Well, when I'm grooming them, I try to, do energy work on them, and I can feel where they're tight or tense. So I'm kind of reading that every day when I'm grooming them and getting them ready. I do a lot of trail riding, a lot of hill work. I take them through water. I try to swim them in the summer. I try to expose them to as many different situations as I can, in groups, alone. It's just spending the time with them and putting them in situations. I do a lot of liberty work in the round pen.
How many horses do you have currently?
That's a funny question.
Well,
I don't have very many of my own, but I think on the property right now there are about 12. And I also have a horse rescue. I just rescued 2 horses last week. The owner died and I took them in. I started a rescue, I think in 2004. It's because a lot of times people have to abandon horses through various situations, like an owner surrender, a domestic violence situation. They have to get the horse somewhere safe. I've had horses come to me from the track, that are really nice. Buddha is a thoroughbred, and I picked him up in Ohio. Actually, he picked me up because I went to a racetrack to look at a horse for a friend. I was driving back from my mother's home in Ohio back to New York, and she said, "Can you look at this horse? I'm interested in him." So I was down the aisle, and this horse was in the back of his stall. But as I walked by, he came out and he could put his head out through the Dutch door, and he kind of grabbed my shoulder and just like pulled me over. And I looked at him. I was like, "What was that?" And I asked the person walking me. Oh, she said, "That horse is awful. He's horrible. Nobody can do anything with him." And I said, "Okay." So then I went and looked at the other horse. Was walking back, and Buddha did the same thing. He came out and he nuzzled me, and I was like, what's going on here? I said, "What is the story of this horse?" And they said, "Well, he's getting on a truck. He doesn't want to run anymore. He's 7 and blah, blah, blah." I said, "Oh, and he's beautiful." And I said, "Well, one thing led to another." I had a vet look at him, and he said he's perfectly sound. If he's 7 and he's lived on the track for this long and run this much, you're probably fine. So he came home with me. And it turns out I got his papers, and he was born 20 minutes from my farm. So one of my clients actually purchased him and sponsored him. And then he was a rescue, and I was retraining him, but he's done quite a few movies. He's great on set. And he just spent 8 weeks this summer on an Apple TV movie called Echo Valley. And he is a lesson horse. And you can't imagine the things you have to do on these movie sets. So I talked the producers into building a very small arena with all-weather footing, because I said, if it rains, we'll never get these shots. And the film is about a horse trainer, and there are many scenes of her training kids. And the trainer is Julianne Moore, but she's terrified of horses, so she can't read a horse or do anything. So I'm like feeding her the lines, while she's teaching the lesson. So funny. But when that day happened to be the hottest day all summer that we had, and so they brought in these giant, like 50 by 50 foot reflection, those giant screens, put them up on these lifts and over the arena. So you had all this equipment on one side of the arena, these giant screens over. It's almost like creating an indoor space. And then you had the Steadicam cameras. I mean, there was equipment everywhere. And the horses were fine. They were like, whatever, And I think because Buddha was on the track, nothing ever phases him. He's like, whatever. I've had ambulances fly by me, and he's a funny thoroughbred because he's opinionated about other things.
Yeah.
Like if he wants to go out, he doesn't love box stalls. So if he wants to go out, he just looks like he's feral and he has to go out. But, then he goes out and he's actually a baby. He's fine. So you got to read your horses. But anyway, he's turned into a really good horse on set. And so he stuck around. So some of the rescues, they do production work. I try to place them as much as I can. My whole philosophy is to retrain them and find them the perfect home. I'm not a hoarder. I don't try to, keep them all in a field. I'm not about that at all. And, you know, a lot of times people will import a horse. I've had several come to me where they've imported very expensive horses that have suddenly just stopped jumping. And the people just want to get rid of them. And so I'll take them and I trail ride them and I just turn them out in the field with other horses. And I find that they were probably, you know, really shut down emotionally because they were box stalled, and horses are designed to move. You know, all of their systems, the digestive system, the, you know, every system, the nervous system, it's all designed to be moving, right? So when you box stall them, you're going against their nature. And that's another, you know, thing that, a problem, I think, in the horse world. You see a lot of horses go down to Florida and you go down and they don't get a lot of turnout.
Yeah.
And I've talked to quite a few top trainers and they're like, yeah, you know, 70% of our vet bill is in Florida. The 4 months we're in Florida because the horses just aren't happy. You know, they get upset, they get fungus, you know, all kinds of things.
Yeah. Florida.
But I mean, Ocala's a little different. I've been to that new place. That's pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing. That's
pretty cool. Amazing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm always learning. I'm learning from every horse, every trainer. I always want to, you know, talk to people about what works for them. And I've always done that, even as a kid. And I grew up riding Western. Then I got into the English, you know, I got into the jumping, the eventing. So I kind of tried it all. I used to drive horses with my grandmother. I don't love driving horses. I find it much better to be on them than behind them.
If something goes wrong, it can go really wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of instances, and so I have great respect for anybody who drives horses. Huge respect. Mm-hmm. So you, how many horses are, of the 12 that you currently have, are they all part of your movie? Do they all work in the movie industry, or?
I try to train them all. So if I'm requested to have a chestnut, he can go on set. Some are better than others. Listo is a white Andalusian stallion that I actually got for Winter's Tale, and he plays the main horse in that movie. I don't know. Did you see that one?
No, but I'm writing these down because I have a playlist now.
I know, you got to watch it. Winter's Tale was fun. That was Colin Farrell rode him throughout the movie. I had to have 4 white horses because the white horse was a main character, and I had to have a stunt double. I had to have a stand-in horse to set camera up, and I had to have a jumping horse for the jumping scenes for the stunt doubles, and then the main horse. And I cast 4 horses, and I didn't really know which one was going to be the star until I started filming, and I realized pretty much immediately it was Listo, because he, like Luna, will just stand and pose for the camera, and he will stand all day long. You know, some horses are just born to be, they have charisma.
Yes.
And they love the adulation. It's so crazy.
Well, you know, I used to think that horses didn't have a recognized self, but then I was told that actually there's a percentage of horses. I'm not sure how they figured it out, but there's a percentage of horses that apparently recognize self. And I think with the horses, like you're describing, the ones that are like, bring the camera on, I'm on, I think they recognize themselves in a way.
I think so.
Yeah. And they like all the fluffy stuff, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you look at horses with charisma, like the great champion show jumpers, or any across saddle seat, any, you know, walking horses, anything. The champions have that, you know, je ne sais quoi quality. It's just that special charisma. It's amazing.
Yeah, Secretary. Sure, he was amazing.
Secretary. Oh my God, yeah, he was like so special. He was great.
Yeah, he was like,
I do think that's
you just have to acknowledge it, and that's good.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
So what was the first thing you did with a shoot or a movie set?
Oh, the first thing I did? Oh, I think one of the first things, I played Benedict Arnold. I had to double the actor because he couldn't ride, and I had to gallop around a lake. And then I had to put the actor on him and call him to me like an A to B. That's the other thing. I train them at Liberty so that I can call them to me so that I can create the movement with a horse so the actor doesn't have to do it. So the craziest job was I worked on I guess not a music video, a video game called Red Dead Redemption, I think. Oh. And they wanted the horse to be in motion capture, so we had to glue all those dots all over his body and then all over the suit of the rider. And I had to lay the horse down, get the horse up, and then I had to get the horse to move diagonally, sideways, in a very small set. It was very, very small. There were cameras on the ceiling, on the sides of the walls, everywhere. And I brought along a friend of mine who's a fox hunter, and he trains horses, he events. He's a very good rider. And I said, okay, now you cannot pretend like you can ride. You just sit there. I'm going to tell the horse what to do through my body language and the whips, 10 feet in front of you. You have to just go with him because they want awkward movements. They're not normal movements a horse would do, right? So I would get him to move laterally or diagonally or whatever in very, 3 or 4 steps, because they had to put this in the video game. I guess it was a Western. I don't know. I never did see it. And he was laughing so hard. He said, don't tell my wife, but I really can't ride. I've never ridden a horse like this. I have to just sit here and go with him. And I have no idea where he's going. It's different from when you are telling the horse what to do.
Yeah.
And, but that's how I can make an actor look like a real rider in a few lessons. Lena Headey was in White House Plumbers, and there were a couple scenes where there are horses in that show. And, that was about Watergate. And,
yeah.
So it was outside Virginia. And so Lena's character was, a great equestrian. Her happy place was on her horse. So that was important to show because then later on, after they break into Watergate, Liddy and Hunt lose their whole lives. And that was part of it. They lose the country clubs. They lose the horses. There's a big scene where the horses are taken away. So that's why horses were in the Watergate film. Everyone's like, why are there horses in that? But she had never ridden, and I was able to put her in the round pen and took the bridle off, and I said, just go with the movement. And I would start and stop the horse, and she would just learn to dance with the horse, not have to control the horse. And so finally we got a scene, and the producers were really worried if she could do the gallop, and she was great. And that's her galloping. I mean, they did have a stunt double on the day, but that's her. And she did a great job. But I called the horse to me. It was an A to B, right? I said, just get up in the 2-point, brace your hands on the neck, and smile and love it. And he just came right to me. So I was on a horse at the end, called him to me. So that's the kind of trust I'm talking about. The horses really trust me over their rider who's sitting on them, and they'll do what I ask.
Yeah. Yeah. That's got to take, how many hours a day do you spend?
It takes thousands of hours to get a horse ready for that. And I, a little bit every day with each horse. And if I don't ride them, I work within the round pen. And, it's a lot. That's why the really good ones I hang on to, because it takes time. It takes time to develop the trust, to put them in those situations. And then in the case with Listo, I had the great fortune to train him on set for 6 months, and he just was a natural. And he's an Andalusian, and he was a horse that the people couldn't wait to sell him. And they were just like, and they were like, oh, he has a lesion in some tendon or whatever, he'll never rear. And he was my best rearing horse. But, the other thing you asked, what do? I give him really good nutrition. I give him a lot of turnout. I let him be a horse. I do body work. I use the Equitape when they're tight. I use the Surefoot pads. I use the Beamer blanket. A combination. It's like mind, body, spirit wellness, because if the horse is happy, he's going to feel better, right? And he's going to perform better.
And it sounds like you're always searching for how to do this even better.
Always searching.
Yeah, your curiosity level of exploration is like way out there.
Yeah. I consider I know nothing. I need to always be learning, always be learning.
Yeah.
Constantly.
So, okay, what is the most difficult thing you've had to teach a horse to do?
Poop on command. And I didn't do it. So that was one guy wanted me to get, the director said, can you get him to poop on command? And I was like, well, I probably could train it over time, but you want this week? So no. So basically, some horses, when they step on set, they just dump, that's just their routine. Usually they will over a few hours, right? In this case, it was for a TV show called Younger, and it was like an equine therapy scene where the actress whispers in his ear, and then he dumps, and then it releases her emotional pain. That was the gag. And my horse just wasn't, and I was getting worried because I was like, this isn't good, this is not good. But we always have prop poop as a backup. So we had prop poop that they made out of chocolate and alfalfa cubes.
I never heard of prop poop, but
yeah. Listen, on movies, everything is a prop, right? So we had one person holding up the tail, the camera was closed, someone else was dropping it, and then, they looked on the ground. The only problem was when the camera was panning to the ground, the prop poop had gotten really hard, so it was bouncing off the ground, and I said that would never happen. So they had to cut that scene. That was funny. But every set, I always ask so I can be prepared. Preparation is the key to success, right? But they'll always throw something at you, and oh, by the way, can we do this? Can we do that? And I never say no. I always say, well, it could be done, but I would have to prep it. And in this case, we don't have time, so let's do this. And I give them an alternative of what is successful. So, yeah, and then there are always stunt doubles, that'll step in. So in some cases, if someone's afraid of a horse, the stunt double will come in and redraw. A lot of times I double them, because in this one movie I had to double one of the actors. There was a fire scene and the horses are let out of the burning barn. Of course, the barn wasn't burning, but we had smoke and everything. And she was afraid to, so, I did that. Buddha was awesome at that, actually.
Really?
He would drop his head in the smoke and he'd come out the door and, like a dragon. And then he'd go, okay, back to one. And he'd go back to one. And so that's the other thing is, horses are great observers, right?
Yes.
They know if you come into the barn with your hunting attire, you're going hunting that day. Or they know if you come in with your show gear, you're going to show. Or if you're just going on a hack. They read everything, every single thing. So they're always aware. And on set, there are all these phrases like action, right? And then they go. Well, a lot of times the horse is told by the director to go like 3 beats after action. So I worked on something called The Nick that Steven Soderbergh did for 2 seasons, and it was 1905, I think. So I had all the horses in carriages, and actually my horse and carriage was picked always to wait till the very last. And one time, Clive Owen's character, he plays the doctor, is going across the street. So Steven, the director, is like, okay, Cari, I want you to go like 3 beats after he starts crossing. Don't run him over, but I want you just to miss him. Oh, so we had to change the words that the first AD said instead of action, because T would go, the horse would just go on action. I couldn't stop him. He was just like ready. And then they go cut and the horse drops. He's like, okay, I'm done. And then you go back to one and they reverse and they go back to their mark, their start mark. So the horses learn, what to do. And some directors, like Ang Lee, does 25 takes, right? So the horse figures it out. He could probably do it without me there by the time, the 13th or 14th take. But then you get like a Steven Soderbergh and he gets 1 or 2 takes. And then the challenge there is to get to the next setup because, you're just getting ready to go back to one. Nope, moving on. We're going to the next setup. So there are all kinds of challenges. And of course, the one I always say, it's so true. Like at a horse show, you're always hurry up and waiting for your time to go in, and depending on your discipline. And in film, it's the same thing. It's hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Yeah. And, the first AD tries to get everybody ready, but the director's the one who's calling the shots. So, you're standing there. And then as the trainer, I have to also, safety is number one for my horse, number one, for the cast and crew. So if I notice a horse is getting agitated, has to move, I will just have to, have the wherewithal to say, okay, wait a minute, I need to take this horse for a walk around here, let him, unwind and then come back. So it's reading the room too, and having the confidence, to maybe break protocol and just say, listen, and I always tell them when I'm working with directors, I've never worked with a bad director. And I say, listen, if I have to step into the scene, it's for safety. And then we can reset and go again. So
So how does the crew, like, are crews used to working with horses or yeah?
No, but invariably I will have the whole cast and crew like hanging out at the horse truck because horses are so healing, right? They calm them down and everyone has anxiety on set. So everyone wants to come in and meet the horse or hang with the horses. And we had a fabulous set for Echo Valley. We were actually located, the horses lived on the farm that we shot at and on the set. And so every day, like Sydney Sweeney plays the daughter, and I would find her in with Moose, hanging out with one of the horses at lunch. She'd be having her lunch with him. And when we wrapped, everybody was so sad, and they all came to say goodbye to everybody, all the horses.
No
And
way.
I've had many of the crew come to the farm, and they're like, we miss all the horses. And they learn a lot about horses, too. Like, they don't really know much until they're working around them or see them work. And like Listo, when the camera car is running next to him and the camera car stops, he stops. So I told the actor, I said, don't worry about stopping. Just sit up because he's going to stop when you reach the end. And they actually were shocked at how quickly they got all the scenes with the horses. They had built in a lot more time because they were afraid, they always say animals and children are the hardest things on set because they're unpredictable. But I came prepared, and I mean, Listo, in Echo Valley, it's fascinating because there are three main characters. There's the mother, who's the trainer, the daughter, who's a drug addict, and then there's the drug dealer, who's the bad guy. And it's a whole like thriller, twist and turn, whatever. But each one of their characters is actually revealed with Listo, with their scene with Listo. And I was being interviewed by the PR person, and it dawned on me. I said, oh my God, because the true strength of the horse trainer comes out when she's with Listo, when she's galloping at the end. And then the daughter, her true core belief and confidence with her horse, one day she's, all drugged up, whatever, goes out, hops on him and jumps around the arena and just like flying, right, and feeling free, connecting to her spirit. And then the drug dealer, when he gets on him, it shows, how out of control, and the horse takes off, and he has to pretend like he can't ride. And he actually could ride, but he had to like pretend like he couldn't. It was going to fall off or whatever. So
it's really fascinating. So how did you find out about Surefoot?
It was in a barn I was at, and I was curious. I was watching them use it, and so I said, "Oh, could I try that?" It was a dressage person had them, and I was like, "Let me try that." And at first, I was like, "This can't work. This is so weird." And then I was experimenting with it, and I still don't really understand how it affects the brain. But I watched the horse's response, and I had a horse come into me who is a terrible cribber, and she cribs still a little bit, but since using them, not nearly as much. Her anxiety level's way down. I don't know if you have any experience with cribbers.
Not enough to know whether or not it's really helpful. So that's really good to know.
Yeah, she definitely has changed. And then each horse, they respond a little different. Some like rock back and forth. Sometimes I'll put the pads under them and they'll like kick it back to their hind leg and tip it on. Like they'll find where they want it. I had one horse refuses to put his foot on it. I just don't even try. He's like, I am not putting my foot on that. He's my retired Grand Prix horse, and he could just be so arthritic they can't pick his. He's 28, but I thought it might help him. But he's just like, no, I don't trust this. I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to force him. But yeah. Luna seeks them out. I had one horse come in who was very both legs really splayed out, but he had a very narrow chest. He wasn't really muscled up. And I started using the Surefoot with him, and as he muscled up and his chest broadened, his feet are much better, much straighter. And, he loves them. And I do the diagonal with him, front, right, back, left, the slants. I mean, each horse kind of tells me what they want. It's interesting. I'm still really learning with it, but I love them. And
I love listening to you because it's exactly right. Every horse is different, and it's the gamut from no, I do not want this to I can't get off of this, right?
Right.
And it's so, sometimes it's so hard for me to get that across to people because they want a formula. I do this for X amount. It's like there isn't a formula.
Mm-mm. Well, there's no formula for life, right?
Yeah.
Life is like a river. You just get on that river and float along.
I love that. And it's we still don't fully understand how it works. I mean, obviously the foot's a sensory organ. We know that. We know there's all these proprioceptors. We know the thing that I've seen from the beginning that I really can't explain is the calming. Like there's obviously, there's, why does standing on that cause that parasympathetic response and that calming, like Luna before she goes on stage? Or
when she's on stage and waiting and getting agitated, I just put her on the pads and she's like, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And the other thing I use them for is, that's the most valuable for sure. It calms them down immediately. It's like, it's almost like a drug, they're like, I think it grounds them in a way too. I mean, I do know putting them on the mark grounds them because I use the mark in the round pen. I work them, and they come and they get on the mark and that's their resting place. Now my mark is the pad, the surefoot pad. And so I'm getting the double whammy of the relaxation, stopping the work, and also it's working on their nervous system. And so they love it. I think horses just intuitively, like a lot of animals, seek, happiness and calmness and what feels good, right? Because they're fight or flight and they have to conserve their energy to flee, instinctively. So they're always resting, when they can, so that, and the surefoot probably calming that whole system, like their spirit even helps them prepare for survival. I don't know, on a very deep level. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I've been doing this for 11 years now and I still don't have
the mystery.
Yeah. But I think that that's one of the things that I love about it is that we don't know everything about how it works and we don't have to. And in the beginning it was like I would try to explain it to people and I say, look, just watch the horse. Don't take my word for it. Just watch the horse.
Exactly.
They're the ones that show us. And I think if we were to spend a little more time, finding out what's working for the horse rather than what we think is going to work. Probably a better way to say that. But that listening, I love when you said that because that's what I tell people is that we need to listen more. They're talking all the time. We're just not hearing their conversation.
Yeah.
So tell us about Bad Bunny. So how did you get this gig and what was this gig and how did it work out?
Well, I have an animal agent, so she'll call me and she'll get a call for a horse and and she's like, they want him to do this, and I'll send several pictures. Like I said, they often choose via color or size, but they don't know what they want. So a lot of times I'll bring something that I know they want. Like I worked on a Ralph Lauren shoot and they wanted a big draft horse. They wanted the biggest black horse. So I brought a black Percheron, but I threw Luna on just in case. And the creative director took one look at that giant, I think he's a Clydesdale, huge. They put a child's jumper saddle on him. It looked ridiculous. And in front of this giant piece of fabric, because it was for home furnishings. So they had this giant piece of fabric out in this field in New Jersey in horse country, beautiful, beautiful. And they wanted, when the sun came up, the horse. And I was like, well, I said to the creative director, I said, listen, I do have another horse. I think you should take a look at her. He came out, took one look at Luna. He was like, oh my God, that's what I want. That's what I want. And so she came out and she was the one they picked. And then they brought her back the next day too. So, the creative directors, they have this feeling they want, but I know horses and I know how they photograph and I know how they work and, whatever. So I have to often bring something else and then they're like, oh yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like anything.
Right. Okay. So your agent.
So my agent calls me like, okay, so I got a call on a Thursday from I have several animal agents and he goes, I have this very famous person coming into town, and they're doing a promo in Central Park. Can you bring a black and a white horse on Tuesday? Okay. Now think about New York City. You have to get permits, health certificates, all kinds of things. It's not like you can just show up with a horse in Central Park. And I said, can this person ride? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, you better find out. Because if they're riding in Central Park with all those people, and if it's someone famous with paparazzi and da-da-da. So he goes, well, I can tell you. It's Andrea Bocelli. I said, really? Because he's blind. Can he ride? And he said, yes, I think so. I said, well, send me tape. I want to see tape, video of him riding. Well, he can ride. He's an amazing rider.
Wow.
So that case, it happened from like a Thursday to a Tuesday. I brought him down. He and his wife rode Listo and another black horse, Zulu. And but there were issues to deal with because, number one, they were 2.5 hours late. Number two, we had 1 million paparazzi surrounding us. The good news about him being late was that I rode the 2 horses on that line, that path, like 100 times. So they knew the path. So I figured by now, when he gets on them, they know where they're going. And we walked around the grates, found all the obstacles along the way. And so it was successful. And then I rode in the little camera car, which was one of those little bicycles, with a guy. So I was right there with the camera. I'm always within 5 feet of the horse. So if anything happens, I can jump out and grab the horse. So that was a unique situation. I mean, they're always different. It's anything from being on a film for 6 months to a music video it's crazy. The production world is crazy. And one of the big things is the footing. I always have to say, what is the footing? I did this beautiful Ralph Lauren shoot. I'll send you the link to that. It's so gorgeous. And it was in their windows on Madison Avenue. And it was so beautiful. It was shot with this $1 million camera that shoots in slow motion. So if you ever see any of those images of the drop of coffee coming out of the cup, because it gets like 1 million frames per whatever second, that's what we shot the horses at. So it was beautiful slow motion of the horse, the muscles rippling and everything. And I gotta let my dog in. And so my dressage horse is jumping, and it looks like he's jumping a 5-foot jump. Come on in. But he's really not. He's jumping a 1-foot cavaletti, and he has 1 stride in front of it and 1 stride after it. So you have to fake it, right? So it's you have to be creative and know that you can start the horse and stop the horse. And because I had a really good rear on Listo, he wanted him striking up, in the movement of the shoulder. So I would just bob him up and have him, strike a few times. And then they got that close up. And that turned out to be beautiful, absolutely beautiful. In fact, so many people came into the store and said, please don't take those down, that they left them up for an extra month because everyone in the neighborhood would come and just sort of meditate in front of these gorgeous horses in the windows. They're like 10 feet tall, 15 feet tall. It was just stunning. So to create the art, you have to, be creative and you have to problem solve. But that's like life, right? You're always solving problems. You're always trying to figure things out. So
what is the most memorable photo shoot? The one that either is your favorite or, what's your most memorable?
That's so hard to say. I did love meeting Andrea Bocelli. When he came up to me, he put his hand on my arm to read my energy, and then he put his hand on Listo and read his energy. And then he felt the tack. I go, oh, very nice tack, very nice tack. And then he got on him, and he had incredible energy. So that was really a remarkable experience. The only other person I've ever met with that sort of serenity and in command of one's, self was the Dalai Lama when I met him twice. And he is just so in the moment and just so present when you talk to him. It's just incredible. So that, I think, was a highlight. But with horses, anytime, my horses perform and they're just amazing. I'm just in awe of them. I'm like, oh my God. I look back at my agent when Luna was working with Bad Bunny and I'm like, can you believe this? I mean, she's on this white set, has no frame of reference. She has a naked girl sitting on her. And she's like, and the camera is 2 inches from her, and then it's zooming back on this long track and coming up. And in that case, it was a pouring rain in Brooklyn. And fortunately, I could drive my 50-foot truck and trailer right onto the set and get off on the set. And then the trailer proved to be the green room. That was her resting area. But again, she was in that truck and trailer all day, didn't get to move around too much. Because, again, I talk about footing. I always require that they put down rubber mats to get to the set. But, the horses need to move, they need to circle, they need to change direction, they need to go left brain, right brain, breathe and calm. But because I have your pads, your surefoot pads, that solves that problem.
It's so cool.
And it's amazing. So she was on the trailer on those and just totally chilling and releasing energy. And she's very much a prima donna. Like, she has to have her entourage. She has to have her people around her. Otherwise, she stomps her feet.
Well, in honor of Luna, we've actually come out with a limited edition pad that's black, the firm pad in black. And it's gorgeous, by the way.
It is. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful.
Welcome. It was like, when I read it, I wasn't sure at first. I was like,
what is she talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. But it was so cool. And, that's the kind of thing that, for me, it's so special to be able to provide you with tools that really make a difference to you and your work and your horses, most especially. So
yeah, I'm so grateful, and Luna loves them. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So so we have Luna pads. We'll have them as long as, if you need more, let me know, because we're using up the can. We bought a can of black paint. It was like, what are we going to do with it now?
I know, right? That's so funny.
Oh, that's okay. It's awesome. Well, Cari, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've just been smiling the whole time listening to you, because your world is fascinating and interesting, and that creativity that you constantly have to keep. The other thing I know already is how prepared you are. Like, you get a job, but you make sure your horses are prepared. You know exactly what you're walking into. You've checked out everything, and so that preparedness provides the base that you need to be successful, so that you can be creative in the moment. And I think that so often people don't appreciate what goes into, like, on film, it's 2 seconds, right? Or a photo, or, like a horse just going by, but the hours of dedication that are required in order to have those perfect 2 seconds. It's really.
Yeah, and the best work ends up on the cutting room floor. It's always the case. Yeah. I also really love working with the actors. Russell Crowe's a great rider, but I wrangled his horse on Winter's Tale, and every scene he was in, I would have to warm his horse up, and then I'd ride the double with him, and he always insisted on going out and riding for 10 or 15 minutes and talking and learning about the horse. And I think every great horseman will do that. They will ask you, so what is this horse like? You can always tell if somebody's inexperienced if they jump on, well, I know this horse, I know what I'm doing, and then you're like, okay. But a great horseman will ask you about the horse and his characteristics and his personality, especially if, all these scenes were galloping and running, and he wanted to know, are there any quirks, anything I need to know? Yeah. And he was fun to talk to. He was wonderful.
That's on top of my list. And Winter's Tale, that's top of the list. Who a must watch.
Yeah, you should watch The Nick too, and watch White House Plumbers. I think it's episode 1 and 4 with the horses. You don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want.
Okay, no, great. I got it on my list here. It's got the weekend. It's apparently going to rain tomorrow, so that'll be perfect.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for
really
joining me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you this evening.
And you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.